Welcome back to RealClear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. We're pleased to welcome Donatien Adu, scientific committee member at Audace Institute Afrique, a nonprofit think tank whose vision is using freedom as a remedy against poverty. Donatien, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill.
Donatien, I asked you on to discuss a complex trial program you're involved in to create a blockchain-based land registry in rural areas of the Ivory Coast. Now, there's a lot of moving parts to the story, so before we get into it, give us a little historical background on the Ivory Coast. I have to confess, I'm not very familiar with the country.
Yeah, you are not the only one. We have a lot of Americans and mainly a world where people are not really familiar with the Ivory Coast. So the Ivory Coast is a country located in West Africa, and it is a former French colony. We gained independence in 1960, has most French colonies. And it was a country that was actually very rich around 60, 70, and 80s. It really had a very interesting economic boom. And then at the end of 80s, it began going down, and we experienced a lot of political crises and a lot of economic downwards.
Now, it's mostly an agricultural economy, right? Coffee, things like that?
Yeah. The Ivory Coast is the number one producer of cocoa, and then we are number 3 producer of coffee. We also produce rubber, and then cashews.
And you've recently gone through some pretty awful conflict and a civil war, correct?
Yeah. So in 2010, we had elections, and we end up having 2 presidents for almost 3 months in the country. But finally, the issue gets solved, and we are now moving forward.
Is there a lot of ethnic conflict in the country, or is it fairly homogeneous in that regard?
The Ivory Coast is a country that has a little bit more than 64 different local languages. And recently, mainly because of politics, we have been having a lot of conflict. And those conflicts went till the land problems. And we can having communities fighting each other because of lands and also because of politics. Yeah.
And as a result, the country right now is pretty far down the economic development ladder. I looked at the numbers. It's down around 140 or something like that.
Yeah, so from 2010 until 2012, the country has been very economically unstable since the 1990s, and it's only by 2011, 2012 that we start coming back to the international arena. But before that, it was pretty tough as an economic situation.
Now, has there been an exodus of trained people, or have you been able to hold on to anyone who manages to get an education?
That's a big problem right now because you're having a lot of students and intellectuals going from Côte d'Ivoire to America, Europe, and wherever, and they don't come back, mostly because of lack of opportunities and also political crises that keep on going all the time.
Now, I look at the World Bank figures, and I see that the country is improving, but it still is negative on the rule of law index. Is the problem more outright government corruption or just run-of-the-mill inefficiency and bureaucratic incompetence?
Yeah, corruption and the heavy bureaucracy and incompetence has been a problem since the 1970s. That's even why the country went from economic growth to a very crappy situation. And till today, the situation still continues. We have a very difficult problem with rule of law. That's even why my institute, Audace Institute Afrique, we decided to have that organization and really promote the rule of law in Côte d'Ivoire because it's a very difficult situation right now. And the politicians, whoever, they're just doing what is right for them and what they think can benefit them. The rest is a very difficult problem. And also our democracy is not that strong as in Western countries. So the president and all the executive have these positions of God, can do everything, basically. So it became very difficult and complicated to have the law getting respected. And even when we have laws that are passed in the Congress or whatever, nothing is more or less respected. So this is a very complicated situation.
So tell us more about the Audace Institute Afrique that you work with.
Audace Institute Afrique is an independent and apolitical think tank that has been founded in 2009. At the origin, the idea was a country like Côte d'Ivoire, we have a very big potential. We produce a lot of raw materials, and we have a very energetic youth. But because of corruption, because of lack of rule of law, because of a kind of incompetence at some point, the country is just going in the wrong direction. And the youth have no dream of a better future. They're just thinking of like, what am I going to do for tomorrow? Almost nothing. So we thought that it was a time to tell them that they can bring the change. For so long, we have been waiting for change from the government, and nothing has been done. So we felt like it was the right time to start getting that idea that development should come from the bottom and then go to the top.
Donatien, as the economist Hernando de Soto described, there's an enormous amount of unleveraged land wealth in developing countries just waiting to be unlocked. Describe the land title problem in the Ivory Coast.
In Côte d'Ivoire, the problem is, I won't say simple, but for someone who would like to understand it, it's pretty simple to understand. First thing, we have only 4% of rural lands that are registered in Côte d'Ivoire. Only 4% have an official title. And those figures are according to the most optimistic numbers. Then second, Côte d'Ivoire is classified among the fragile states, and the state has a very low capacity. Third, the law governing the registration of land is inaccessible to the people. The cost is equivalent to 1 year of income for an average household in rural areas.
Wow.
And administrative procedures are also long and complicated. Then, the access to private property is therefore impossible, and only for rich people, while 46% of the population lives on less than $2 a day. The situation in villages, like social cohesion, is disturbed by many disputes and conflicts over land issues. And without papers to secure land, the arbitrary rules and insecurity grows as well as poverty.
Describe some of the people you're trying to help.
In Côte d'Ivoire, most people live on agriculture. And when you go in places like probably at the west of the country, you're having those people who have nothing, almost nothing, except their lands. And this is the only one that they have to rely on to provide for food and also put their kids at school and also get healthcare and whatever. But they don't have official titles. So it's quite easy for someone to come from the town and come say, okay, this land is mine or whatever, and then they have disputes, and they can't invest on those lands when they have disputes. And also, a pretty tricky problem is like we're having people that came from neighborhood countries, and when they came, you can say, okay, Bill, this is your land. Can I have it for a year because I want to grow some vegetables for my family? I would say, yes, it's fine, you can have it. And then after 1 year, you come back and say, Donatien, can you please give my land back? I would say, oh, no, Bill, I thought that you gave me the land for real. I thought that you sold the land to me. Because we have nothing concrete. We have like no contract, no official contract that says that that land is for you, or we have probably had a lease on probably landing for a year, 2 years, or 3 years. So there's almost nothing on that point.
So if you did develop a clear and unambiguous title system so that people knew who owned what property and there were no disputes, what would they do with it? How would that unlock the economy?
So once those people have lands that are clear enough and with no conflict, they can easily have economic transactions on those lands. For instance, in Côte d'Ivoire, it's very common with some people like experiencing financial difficulties. They may have like 2 or 3 farms, and because they're having difficulties, they can probably give one farm to someone who is working on it, and they will give them some money in return for that. And after 2 years, they get their land back. So if they have clear ownership titles on those lands, it will help them easily have those transactions, which will make things easier. And they can also plan ahead, and they can increase their income by doing those transactions.
So over time, with an efficient land title system, would you imagine ownership of the land would gravitate into the hands of the most efficient farmers?
This is something we've been thinking about. And in our program, we had this part which is forming local communities that are in charge of administrating those lands even when we will be gone. And they exactly know who owns what. And if tomorrow you have your land and then you want to sell it or you want to lease it, then it depends on you. It is no more of a business of anyone.
It's not a community decision. It's an individual decision.
Exactly. It's your property. And if you think that you can be better off selling it, then you do that. If you can be better off renting it, you do that. This might probably come, but for now we are a bit far from that.
Donatien, we've been discussing the economic role unclear land titles play in keeping a country underdeveloped. Before we get into your trial program, remind us what blockchain technology is and where it came from.
Blockchain technology, it is mainly used in the financial system, and in our specific case, is a tool that offers great security in terms of cryptology. If you want to keep some information or contract, whatever, safe, blockchain can be helpful in doing that.
It was originally used for supporting Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, this is something pretty new in a country like Côte d'Ivoire and also to the developing world. People are not really high-tech in those countries, but at least we just use phones and probably computers. But blockchain is pretty new for all of us, but it's close to the Bitcoins, and even a difficulty to make the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain in my country. We have only experts that really know exactly what it does and how it can be used. But in our institute, we are familiar with the blockchain because we are working with an expert who is developing that technology in Côte d'Ivoire.
So I understand that blockchain can be used to create a distributed ledger that's very difficult to forge or corrupt.
Yeah, blockchain offers a very good security, and that's why we are trying to use it in this program. Because in contract matters, mainly in those villages, if you leave it without security, people can easily change the contract, and tomorrow you can even have more conflicts than before. So that's why we're using it, and it's pretty difficult to corrupt. And we think that this is the appropriate tool right now we need in the Ivory Coast to secure land titling.
Plus, an average person can access it as a user through their smartphone, right?
Yes, but right now, like I said previously, technology is pretty new to Côte d'Ivoire and also most developing countries. We are all using cell phones and computers, but when it comes to the technical stuff, most people don't really know how to use it. And in our specific case, we are training people in those villages and show them how to use it.
Once a blockchain-based land registry is established, who enforces legal claims based on those digital titles?
The work is mainly done by the people on site, forming communities following the model of Eleanor Ostrom of the Economic Nobel Prize, and we are helping them try to learn clearly how to use those technologies, and they can themselves enforce it. If there are problems, we can be there sometimes to support, and we're also having teams to support them. But mainly we want them to be independent. So it's mainly the people themselves enforcing those technologies.
So this is what you mean by bottoms up.
Exactly. So we're giving them the power to do something like that will empower themselves.
So that could solve probably most of the disputes, but if a country is irredeemably corrupt, I mean, what difference does it make whether land title is on paper or digital? If all you need to do is bribe a judge, how do you fix that?
Blockchain is very secured, and it will be difficult for those people to corrupt those contracts. And then, second, we're having those committees. One of their roles is to help reduce conflict in those villages and also to settle disputes within the communities before it goes to court. Because right now we have so many cases in court and it's not going anywhere. So we want them to settle those disputes within the communities, which makes it easier and also ask for less money for transportation and for administrative papers.
So you're basically reinventing the common law.
Exactly. The title of our study was How to Reinvent the Rural Land System in Côte d'Ivoire. So we are basically reinventing everything.
Fascinating. So Donatien, describe the trial program the Audace Institute has embarked on.
The program right now we are doing, like I said, is a bottom-up approach. We are trying to give bottom-up solutions to these rural land problems using new technologies. Basically, the thing we are doing is, firstly, to have internal regulations in those places. So we're having those village communities organizing themselves and having a kind of trust committee by all the villagers or all the people in the village. And they are kind of official representatives of all the families for solving all problems with land.
So which villages are you working in?
Right now, we are working in 4 pilot villages. The one we're working right now on is Giglo, which is at the west of the country. this is a place that I've been experiencing a lot of conflict and sometimes very bloody conflict.
When your trial is fully up to scale, how many different pieces of property will it be managing?
We are still working on the methodology, and by the end of this year, we should be able to have a clear methodology. But something else we are looking at is trying to have those people having kind of like being able to go and have one official title for the whole village, and then within that official title, they know exactly who owns what. So we don't have yet the numbers of individual titles and individual pieces of property, but by the end of this year, we should be able to know that.
And how do you select the village elders or the members of the committee that will help guide this whole process?
Before starting this program, we had a study. We had a kind of like interdisciplinary and multicultural study on the ground for 2 years. We went in those communities, tried to see who is powerful, who influences what, and who is at the head of what. And then, based on that, we have been able to isolate the people that will be able to bring a kind of consensus to the population on those particular villages.
So once you get the trial up and running at scale, how long do you think it'll be before you'll see some results?
This will be probably difficult to tell, but the pilot program goes over 6 years. And then by the end of that, and I'm pretty sure after 1 or 2 years of intense work, we'll probably start having results already, because right now people are very receptive of the program. They are very enthusiastic of having us. They know that this is a unique opportunity for them to escape poverty. And yeah, I think we are pretty sure we're going to have great stories coming pretty soon.
So once you establish this rule of law from the bottom up, do you expect there'll be legislation to recognize it in the formal courts?
By doing this program, we're thinking, how can we make it credible so that the government find this program worthy of becoming national? So far, we have been working with strategic partners, and we have strategic partners like the World Bank. We also have the National Chamber of Commerce, and those are really the most concerned people about the situation. And then we're also having some government officials that know about our work. And our hope is after we finish this trial, the government will see how important it is, and they will allow it to become national, and then finally solve this difficult and crucial problem in Côte d'Ivoire.
So Donatien, you're not long out of school yourself. You're a young man. This sounds like a project of a lifetime. What's your long-term vision for your country?
I think you got it very right. This is a lifetime project for me. I'm really coming from, I won't say poor, but very average family. And I got the opportunity to study in the U.S. and also visited many other countries. And I saw that Côte d'Ivoire has a big potential, but we don't have what it takes to be developed. My vision by probably 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I want to see a country very prosper. I want to see a country like Côte d'Ivoire where people can wake up in the morning and know that they have something to eat. They can put their kids at school, and they can have a country that can stand within the world nations. Also, one of my hopes is to see a country where we have a rule of law, where we have equality of opportunities, where corruption will be much lower, and also have a very few, like a very little government. Right now, the government is too heavy and really costs a lot to the people. Those are really lifetime projects, and since my high school, I've been working on that, and I've done so much things in that direction already.
Well, Donatien, we wish you the best of luck. We'll check in on you in the years ahead. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
That was Donatien Adu, Scientific Committee Member at Audace Institute Afrique, here on RealClear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. You can check out RealClear Radio Hour on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at RealClearFrezza. And while you're at it, take a look at RealClearFuture.com for daily updates on the next big wave of technologies. If you like what you heard today and want to catch up on our past programs, go to RealClearRadio.org and check out our podcast archive of over 300 interviews. Listen to Peter Thiel discuss the power of entrepreneurship, Steve Forbes talk about reviving economic growth, Sal Khan describe the Khan Institute's amazing approach to online education, Matt Ridley debunked Luddite alarmists while exalting human achievement. James Grant explained how government intervention usually makes market crashes worse. Walter Williams exposed the corrosive effect of welfare on society's moral fabric. John Mackey explained conscious capitalism. And Kevin Kelly, Patrick Moore, Richard Lindzen, and a host of others exposed the dangers of misplaced environmentalism. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Old Boston Restorations, for their support. Old Boston is a boutique property management company located in Boston's South End. Visit them online at oldbostonrestorations.com. That wraps up our show for this week. We'd like to wish all our listeners a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. Please join us next week, same time, same station, as we close out 2016. See you then.